would be easy for fans who wanted Matt LaFleur fired to say, well, if they had an owner, they would never tolerate this level of underperforming in the postseason. Look at what the Buffalo Bills did. But look at what the Buffalo Bills did yesterday. Listen to the owner talk, and then tell me you want an owner in Green Bay.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you get podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Al Harris interviewed, or is set to interview, for the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator job. Not just another crony interview here as a former Packer. It's real. And there's another Bills story here I want to touch on at the end of the show. But let's rewind. The Packers keep Matt LaFleur. The Bears lose in the divisional round of the playoffs, and they fire Sean McDermott. And the response that I saw from a lot of folks who thought LaFleur should have been out on his ass, they pointed to Buffalo and said, see, they had the foresight, the courage, and the guts to do what was necessary. And then the facts start to come out. And then the reporting gives us some insight into what happened here. And it turns out that part of the friction in the Bills organization was Sean McDermott didn't think the roster was good enough. Billy Beane, the general manager, did, or at least wants to cover his ass. And so he whispers in the owner's ear and says, we got to get rid of this guy. He's not doing good enough. Look at you, like these players. You like all these players. You were part of the process here. This coach is got to go. And then you listen to the post-mortem press conference, and you listen to ownership. You listen to Terry Pegula talk about what went on here. And you're just like, how could anyone think that was good process? They're throwing Keon Coleman, their former top pick at receiver, who was a healthy scratch multiple times this season, late to meetings, having issues. They basically hang that around Sean McDermott and are openly talking about this guy who's on their roster. And I think what happens here is there is an idealized version of what an owner can bring to an organization. In a perfect world, like say, if you were in charge, you would be the perfect owner. Because you would know right when to put the pressure on. You'd know right when to take a step back. You'd know right when to push the buttons, right? Except that never happens. It never happens. The only owners that we think of as being good at being owners are the teams that spend frivolously, and then effectively too, because they just kind of spray and pray, throw money at everything. The Dodgers, they've won World Series off doing that. But guess what? The Yankees have a high payroll. They don't. The Mets, my goodness, all they do is throw money at the problem with Steve Cohen here. And it hasn't won them any World Series. Owners, for the most part, are malevolent forces in organizations. They make organizations worse the more they want to be involved. The good owners let the football people do the thing. You are paying general managers and front office people and coaches a lot of money. to manage the football part of it. This is not like at a Fortune 500 company where the CEO, the person who makes these decisions, has direct knowledge of the business and understands this is the best thing, this is the best path forward, because you have to become a subject matter expert to be a good CEO. You don't to be a good owner. And yet owners consistently meddle and prod and poke and coerce, and almost always with bad outcomes. Look at Jerry Jones. It worked shortly, and then the reason it stopped working is his own ego, because he wouldn't let anyone else take the reins. And it's still a problem because he won't let anyone else take the reins. He still wants to negotiate contracts, still wants to do all this stuff. Guess what? If I gave you the choice of having 32 owners sit in a room and negotiate with David Mulugeta, or I guess 31 owners, right? Or Russ Ball, who would you rather be negotiating for you? The answer is Russ Ball every single time. And that doesn't mean the Packers don't make mistakes. Sometimes they want players that they want to pay, and they shouldn't. Like the Aaron Banks contract does not look like a good one right now. The Nate Hobbs contract does not look like a good one right now. And they've certainly, the Aaron Rodgers contract that they signed, it does not look like a good one. So that's not to say that they are, above criticism for any of these moves. But I look at the way that they handle the football business, and I go, that is so much better than almost every team in the NFL, if not every team in the NFL. Having an owner is not some cure-all. The Chiefs are not a consistently good organization because they have good ownership. The 49ers didn't go to multiple Super Bowls because they have good ownership. It's because they have Kyle Shanahan. And in the Chiefs' case, it's because they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Now, they have made some good decisions on front office people, and there has been some decline in the quality of those rosters over the last couple of years as the front office folks are getting picked away. Brain drain is real. Guess why the Rams continue to have success? It's not because of the ownership. It's because Les Snead and Sean McVay are really freaking good at what they do. And they are allowed to do it. Now, they have a salary cap, and so it's different. Football and baseball are different, right? You can't just spend your way out of a hole in the NFL. Every team that has tried has failed. But whether you think the LaFleur decision was good or not, the process by which a decision was reached, I am positive, without having any information about how that decision was reached, I can tell you I would rather the Packers decision makers, Ed Policy, Brian Gutekunst, Russ Ball, have reached that decision on Matt LaFleur than 31 NFL owners. Because I see the way that ownership impacts teams, and in almost every case, it's bad. Now, as we talk about process, Al Harris, next up as a defensive coordinator interview, another defensive backs coach. Let's talk about him next on Locked On Packers. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood Prediction Markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood Prediction Markets change the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. NFL playoffs here winding down, and there's nothing better than being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, the cheering alongside other fans. Nothing like it. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting the tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few clicks. The app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets takes just minutes. One of my favorite features, view from the seat. This is vital. I need to know what I'm getting ahead of time. Especially in a stadium I've never been to. You want to go see the Packers on the road, for example, or any stadium or arena you've never been to. Having a view of the seat before you buy, incredibly heartening and understanding what you're getting. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. It's such a good time to be in the Locked On Packers group chat because we're talking about coaching candidates. I'm taking questions. I'm building shows around the questions being asked in the group chat. So why are you not a part of it if you're not? Come hang with us. LockedOnPackers.supercast.com and be an Everydayer Club member. You get ad-free episodes of Locked On Packers. Plus, you get to be in the group chat. And the group chat is the place to be. One of the things we've talked about in the group chat, Al Harris as a candidate. And he is one of those coaches that I get asked about all the time. And I want to set the same parameters for this one as I did for Christian Parker. Because Al Harris, if he weren't a Packer, would still be a worthy candidate. There's a reason the Commanders are talking to him. And by the way, I think if he does get a DC job, it will be the Commanders' job. Dan Quinn in Washington worked with Al Harris in Dallas. Ben Johnson brought Al Harris from Dallas to Chicago. The Bears defense was bad last year. The one thing they were really good at was creating turnovers. They play aggressive football. They are fighting at the ball every single play. They want to play the ball in the air every rep. They want to create turnovers. They want to bait quarterbacks. They want to create splash plays. And the one good thing about that defense, the pass rush stinks, the run defense stinks. The one good thing about that defense was they create turnovers at a historic rate. It's one of the things that makes their season so fluky and one of the reasons why I think they're going to regress, especially defensively next year, barring, a Max Crosby trade or something like that. Al Harris is one of the architects of that. Now, Jalen Johnson, really good player. Kevin Byard, always been a ball hawk. But it is about mentality. And Jeff Hafley, for all of the effort that he put into punch the ball, creating fumbles, it didn't work, did it? Like you can emphasize something. And Coach Jags on our squad show always talks about you get what you emphasize. Well, except in this case, when the Packers tried to emphasize turnovers and didn't create any. All year didn't create any. Now, part of that is the scheme that they played. You're going to see a lot more, blitzing from Dennis Allen to create quick throws. You're going to see a lot more man coverage from Dennis Allen, so more contested throws, more tipped passes that can turn into turnovers, those sorts of things, especially for a team that did not have a good four-man pass rush or even a good blitz pass rush. This is also a continuation of the theme. 4 candidates that we know of, 4 coaches with a history with their defensive backs. Now, what I was told when I asked around a year ago, when it was possible that Jeff Hafley was getting a head coaching job, when he got some looks last year, Al Harris was the name I kept hearing. Now, that was a different coaching cycle and different candidates available. I think this coaching cycle provides much more robust group of candidates. I've said that since the Packers season's ended. And we knew Jeff Hafley was going to be out, or we had a feeling he would be. I think that the Packers need a defensive coordinator that is more ready to come in right away and coach your defense. Like Al Harris has not been a coach that long. And I think expecting him to come in and call the defense for a team that is ready to go make a Super Bowl run would be a much bigger risk than in the case of Christian Parker or Durante Jones. And certainly Jonathan Gannon. Jonathan Gannon called the defense on a team that went to the Super Bowl. Christian Parker on a staff that went to a Super Bowl and won one. On the staff of the best defense in the league a year ago. And so for this team, you need someone to come in right away and be able to impact your defense. I know Christian Parker is young, but he's also someone who has really been preparing for this for a long time. He's been coaching since 2013. The word I got out of Dallas on Al Harris was he is a motivator and he is a technician. He's not a guy that's going to call your defenses. I was actually talking in our squad show group chat with Coach Jags, and he was like, if you're a DB's coach, you have to be able to call the fronts. You have to be able to coach the fronts. And I don't know. Now, passing game coordinator this year, and if you look at, say Christian Parker's resume, you're going to see, okay, he was a QC and then he was a DB's coach. And only now is he a passing game coordinator. This was his second year as the passing game coordinator in Philadelphia. I do think that 1 year makes a difference, but he's been a DB's coach since 2013. That was in college, but he's been doing this for a while now. And I think that difference is important. It's also, I think, important to point out someone like Jim Leonhard, who the Packers cannot interview until next week and can't hire until the Broncos are done playing, is, I think, a more ready-made solution. Someone who has actually called defenses in big games. I understand college, but in college, he was a defensive coordinator. He called the defenses. He also played. And I know Al Harris played too, but when you're a safety, it's a little different because you're part of the run fit in a different way. And so you have to understand the run fits in a different way. So again, this is not an indictment of Al Harris, his football IQ or anything like that. It's more about for this Packers team. Like I think Al Harris, for a team like the Commanders, their defense needs to be rebuilt. I don't know that even if everything goes right for them next year, they're really a contender in the NFC. I thought they were going to regress this year. They did. They did for reasons we couldn't have foreseen, but also reasons we could. I think he makes more sense in a place like Washington than in a place like Green Bay. And that's going to be disappointing for fans. I understand that. I think the Packers need a defensive coordinator who is ready to come in right away and call your defense. It's why, and again, I know that people are not going to be excited about Jonathan Gannon because the unknown is not as appealing as the known when the known is, underwhelming in some ways. But bringing in a coach who has had a head job in the same way that I thought Brian Callahan, who I didn't think was anything great as an OC or anything great as a head coach, certainly. Having those experiences, though, provides some value to Matt LaFleur as a sturdy figure in this organization. And I think the Packers need a coach that, like Jeff Hafley, Matt LaFleur could just say, Jeff, you got it. I don't think he could do that. Certainly by the end with Mike Patton, he was having to take a much bigger role in what that defense was doing, to the point that he's like suggesting calls in a playoff game. And maybe that's a Matt LaFleur problem. Maybe, when things get tough, he has a tendency to over manage, to want to take on more responsibility. I'll do it. I sometimes have the same problem in my own life. I know that I'm probably not alone in people listening to this show that feel that way. And that's something that I've had to work on a long time over the course of my life. Just sometimes it's okay to let other people do it. And you have to live with the outcome if you're going to do that. I think the Packers need a DC that they can set and forget. And a first-time DC, I think that is scary. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not the right hire. I think Christian Parker would be a really good hire. I do think it would be a bigger risk than someone like Jim Leonard, and I do think it would be a bigger risk than someone like Jonathan Gannon, even if it has higher upside. This raises an interesting question, which is, can the Packers actually afford to chase that upside? Or have they built up enough talent on this defense? Let's say they can add a corner in free agency. Maybe they can find the fountain of youth for Trayvon Diggs, something like that. Does it make more sense to get a defensive coach where they're just not going to do the stupid thing and let the offense just try and go win these games? And you have enough talent on your defense with Evan Williams and Javon Bullard and Xavier McKinney and Micah Parsons and Edgerrin Cooper that's just going to be enough. Like, the Texans don't do anything that weird. I don't think Vic Fangio and the Eagles do anything that weird. But they're very sound. They fly around. They tackle really well. And their front kicks people's asses. You don't need, Buddy Ryan. You don't need peak Bill Belichick to call a defense when you have elite talent. And the Packers have some elite talent. Can they afford to take a risk? I don't know. And I don't know what their appetite for that risk is. My guess would be it's not very high. I think Jeff Hafley was a risk in some ways, but in other ways, we're talking about a longtime DB's coach in the NFL for, Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh, guys that Matt LaFleur can vet. And not only was he a DC in college, he was a head coach in college. So the trust levels are just a little bit different. It's why I think that right now, my number one candidate in terms of who I think makes the most sense and who I would want if I were the Packers is Jim Leonard. Are they going to feel the same way? I guess we will see. Now, I mentioned Keon Coleman. If you're going to air out all the dirty laundry of a young player like this, does that mean you're going to trade him? And if so, does he make sense for the Packers? I think he does, and I'll explain why next. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that fit piece is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your posts at the top of the page to help you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boosts your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress of guesswork. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. As someone who has to do the self-employed thing, I understand, unfortunately, how tedious that can be, how you worry. Am I getting everything that I should be getting? It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it, because I'm sure not an expert. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert doesn't file for you last year, you're set. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. I know everyone is very focused on corner, very focused on what's happening with the offensive line, linebacker with the uncertainty around Quay Walker. But this receiver room is in an interesting spot because Romeo Doubs is almost certainly going to be playing somewhere else next year. He was just on Kay Adams' show and was talking, I think, like he knows it's over too. And I know there's been some discussions over the last year between Romeo Doubs' agent and the Packers just to sort of gauge where they're at in terms of what the money could look like. But when you draft Matthew Golden and you draft Savion Williams and you extend Christian Watson, you're telling everyone what you want to do. The Packers picked Christian Watson, and I think that's the right choice. But you still want to have diverse skill sets in your locker room. And Keon Coleman played at Michigan State with Jayden Reed. There is talent there. We're talking about a top pick, someone who has not lived up to that talent, who does not separate extremely well, but who in contested catch situations, who in run after catch situations can be a useful player. Now, it sounds like there's some maturity issues. There's some work ethic problems. And that's on a team that desperately needs receiver help. They were like, we'd rather have this guy sit and learn that this is not an acceptable way to handle your business in the NFL than play him. So my thought is, well, he's cheap for 2 more years. You could probably get him for nothing. Why not go make a move like that? Like we talked about Trayvon Diggs being the Christian Kirksey, Devin Funchess kind of upside play. Why not take a stab at having Keon Coleman be your Malik Willis? You send out a day 3 pick, maybe it's a pick swap, and you give it a shot. Maybe with Jayden Reed in that room, you can get the best out of a player like that. And look, Sean McDermott is out. Maybe part of the deal is he just didn't have guys as engaged as they needed to be. Now that's not blaming the foibles of Keon Coleman on the coach, because you're an adult. You're getting paid millions of dollars to go play a game. You should do the work. But could you feel like your infrastructure is better set up for him to succeed? It gives you a 2-year runway. And let's not forget, this time next year, Jayden Reed and Dontavian Wicks are going to be free agents. I'm not sure that they're going to sign either one of those guys. So why not take a flyer on a guy with first-round upside, who I understand was not a super productive collegiate receiver. Part of that was the quarterback. Part of that was, at Michigan State at least, he's playing with Jayden Reed, who was a very productive collegiate player. And I don't know if Matthew Golden's long-term future is as a boundary receiver most of the time. I don't know if Savion Williams' future as a receiver is on the boundary most of the time. And Christian Watson is also someone who can destroy defenses, especially 2 high defenses that want to play quarters, especially from the slot. It would be nice to have another boundary receiver, big-bodied boundary receiver, who you could convince to block. Like, would you rather have Malik Heath in the Malik Heath role or Keon Coleman? Now, even with those questions, you look at this receiver room this year with no Romeo Doubs. You have Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, Jayden Reed, Savion Williams, Bo Melton. And so I saw people float, would you trade Dontavian Wicks for Keon Coleman? Like, you've got 6 receivers on your team, but you really are only sure that 3 of them, 4 of them are any good. We don't have any idea what Savion Williams is. And Bo Melton, really, I would love it if Bo Melton could focus on being a special teams player. Like, we are to the point now where it is clear, and it was clear to some of you in real time. I was trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Like, Bo Melton should not be getting targets ahead of Matthew Golden, period. I understand Matthew Golden was fighting through some injuries, and I do think slimming down the room in terms of the guys you trust might actually be a good thing for this team. I've said that before. I'll say it again. But it's a flyer. If he's not coming to class, if he's not putting in the work, you cut him and it costs you nothing. Like, his base salaries the next 2 years are very low, very manageable. Like, you're not going to get a free agent with sort of upside that Coleman has. So this is the waters that you're swimming in here if you're the Packers, because they're not going to have a ton of money. They're not going to be able to go out and spend a bunch of money on free agents. These are the type of shots that the Packers have been unwilling to make mostly. You look at some of the trades that have been out there for, upside players where you could get them for, or even aging players, but for, 5th round picks, 6th round picks. It's like, why would the Packers not have been in on something like that? Now, a 3rd round pick for Jahan Dotson, that's a hard no, and that's a bad trade. It's turned out to be a bad trade. If I could pick, I would pick that the Packers would add some veteran players. The stat was out there that the Packers were only like a year and a half or 2 years older than the average age. I think it's less than 2 years older than Indiana, the team that just won the national title in one of the all-time great sports stories. At some point, it would be really nice to have some veterans in your locker room, some real veterans. It's why, I think once upon a time, Ted Thompson went out and got Julius Peppers. It's why in some ways I think that Brian Gutekunst went out and got Jimmy Graham. Because bringing in those guys with bona fides like that matters to locker room culture. And if they can still play, like Julius Peppers was still a really, really good player for the Packers. So I'm not saying go out and get, the final year of, like last year's Von Miller or even 2 years ago's Von Miller. That guy can't play anymore. I'm not saying that. Don't get somebody to just be a coach. You pay your coaches to be coaches. But this is the sort of upside play that I think could still make sense for the Packers. Do I think they'll do it? No, they probably won't. They probably won't. But it was something I wanted to talk through on the show. Anyway, all right, we're going to get a little bit closer to figuring out what's going on with this defensive coordinator search tomorrow. So we'll talk about it. We'll be one day closer to an outcome no matter what. But I don't think anything, and no movement is going to happen until the Packers interview Jim Leonard. All signs point to them interviewing Jim Leonard. And then we'll see where this defensive coordinator search goes. The problem is, I don't know that they can wait. If the Broncos win, like they can't hire anyone off that staff until after the Super Bowl. And considering Jim Leonard left them at the altar last time, I don't know if that's something you want to wait on. You got to have some sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Kellen Moore, Jonathan Gannon, we've seen this before. Guys have gotten the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But you'd much rather just be able to, hire the guy and get rolling. Because the combine turns around fast. And free agency turns around fast. And getting a 2-week head start would be nice. All right, back tomorrow. Much more here on Locked On Packers. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Packers. As always, subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Tell a friend about Locked On Packers. Get all the latest episodes. If you're an everydayer, you get them ad-free. So that would be a bonus for you. Plus, you get to be in the group chat, the Locked On Packers group chat. LockedOnPackers.supercast.com is the website. Go check it out. We'll be on a squad show tonight, Thursday, 7 Central Time, Lambeau time. We'll be here for you on the squad show. Me, Jags, Brandon Snide, maybe a fourth. We do have fun when it's a 4-person booth. That'd be a lot for a game, but it's perfect for us on the squad show. And for those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NFL YouTube channel. On audio, make your second listen Locked On NFL or make it Locked On Packers Squad Show so you can stay Locked On Packers.